What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Happy New Year. Jack Greenstock here, joined as always by an amazing panel. And I'm going to kick it over first to Spartan Grown.
Thanks, Jack. I am Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces. Or you can shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com. Or if you have lighting specific LED lighting questions, you can shoot those over to russ@gmlarmy.com.
Good stuff. Happy to have you back. And next up, we've got Brandon Rust.
What's going on, everybody? Happy New Year. It is going to be awesome. I'm Brandon Russ. If you're not familiar with me, thanks for tuning in. And definitely check out Bokashi Earthworks. The website has educational blog posts on there that are pretty awesome and awesome products that I think a lot of you guys use also.
Yes, indeed. I'm definitely a fan of the products and happy to have you back. And last and certainly not least, just jumped in as we were doing our introductions. We've got Noah the Grower.
How's it going, everybody? Yeah, I'm Noah DeGrow with two E's on Instagram. You can find me there. And most weeks here, and happy to be here.
We're happy to have you back. A little bit before the show, we were just chatting about what we're smoking on tonight. I started off by sharing I'm smoking on a little Jet Setter OG, which is jet fuel OG to Sunset Sherbet. And I think Brandon said he was doing a little grape gas and some GG4, if that's correct, Brandon. How's it
Oh,
smoking over there?
excellent, man. I just took down my first harvest from my home grow. I bought a house last year and I finally got everything set up because I had a little bit of extra time, and I'm really glad I did because I've got some super fire weed to smoke on.
Always worth it. And that's what the show is really all about. At the end of the day, I'm certainly slacking. I'm unintentionally stress testing Spartan Grown's Project V. They need to be one, I'm just going to cut because I went on vacation and I came back and I drought stressed it way too much. And I could probably fight, but it's like, it's got four main colas and like maybe got like two good nodes on each cola. And it's almost a foot tall at this point. The other one's got like, 10 or 15 good nodes all around. And it just got drought stress. I forgot to water it before I went on vacation, which more than a minor detail when you're gone for several days. And I came back and lots of yellowing, lots of dead leaves and droopiness. So I watered them back up, and the one recovered fine. The other one definitely took a major hit, but it'll give me a chance to go solo plant in the earth box. I'm going to use some of aforementioned Bokashi Earthworks products. I really feel like the Amino N Plus will be able to give some quick nitrogen and regreen up some of these unhappy leaves and make that more happy of the two stressed out plants a lot happier. And for those who've been following along, they're like, Jack, this fucking plant's been alive for a long ass time. I've just been like vegging and vegging, and it's still in a fucking 1 gallon easy swap pot. So it's really an ultimate stress test, and I'm not expecting too much, but at least I'll be able to give Spartan Grown some feedback on the fact that the plants can live through a whole lot of shit and a whole lot of neglect. So it wasn't my
I
intent going out,
like
but
that.
life
I like the
happens.
stress testing, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's I've seen plants die from a whole lot less. So I'll say this, it's fairly resilient from what I've put it through so far to be still be living and kicking. It's funny, we've got a lot of listeners who come on and show off their gardens and they're like looking dialed in, like everything's flat canopy, everything's green, everything's healthy. I'm like, man, that's looking good. I'm like, that's how my garden should be looking, especially when I do all the stuff that I'm supposed to do. But it's easy to get behind. I've also seen like the garden where you've got like one plant that's like 2 feet tall and a bunch of plants that are just sprouted and they're trying to figure it all out and get it all dialed back in because things get out of hand sometimes. Life happens, and the garden can get a little bit out of control. But speaking of which, I know Noah the grower is one of those people who's very diligent and stays on top of his garden. How are things going over there in your garden, Noah?
Going good. I just pulled down 4 yesterday, and I took some clones and put some underneath that hood before I went to sleep last night. And then during the show, I got to transplant a bunch of clones from Dixie cups into ones, and then I got to take a bunch of teens out of the ones and put them in twos. So it's just I'm actually right now filtering my water in the Berkey water filter that I bought like maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago on the word from Spartan Grown, which I love. And yeah, I'm just constantly working. When you're doing a perpetual, there's always something to do, and it's always a lot of fun. I mean, it keeps you on your toes, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Even when you're not perpetual, I feel like if you've got live plants, there's always something to do and something that could be done a little bit better. I feel like the best grow I'll have is like a 9.5 out of 10. There's always like that zero point 0.5 to like one more that point that I could add on if I really dialed everything in just perfectly. Speaking of dialing things in and getting it a little bit more perfect, Brandon, I was curious because I'm at the point where I was almost considering I have some leftover cocoa and nutrients from back when I was a cocoa grower. And if I was going to do a quick turn and burn run, I was thinking about popping some stuff back into cocoa and doing a little cocoa grow, especially after having some really good hydro and cocoa grown herb that had lots of flavor and as good or even better than some of the stuff that I've grown myself in soil. So it's definitely a viable option, especially when done well versus like when I'm not doing my best in soil. So I thought about that, but then I also thought, I do love soil, and when I do it well, I feel like that is my ultimate highest potential for my garden and my taste. But um, with that being said, my soil's going on almost 4 years now. I've reamended it a few times, but I've never actually tested. So I'm curious, Brandon, if you have any thoughts on potentially what the best route. I think I've heard you say Logan Labs in the past. Is there any other options? I know I heard other people say go through a local university, and once you sample that, or if there's even advice on how to best sample. Like I have 1 gallon pots. I've also got an earth box. So what would be some of the steps that you would take to kind of refresh the garden? And then after you touch on that, I'll go ahead and introduce Matthew.
Sure. Why don't we let Matt introduce himself first, and then I'll get to that question.
Perfect. Sounds good. I saw that he's all loaded up here, and as I was jibber jabbering, I realized he loaded in, so I should probably introduce him. Welcome back, Matthew Gates. Good to have you.
Thanks. Yeah. As always, most people know, but if they don't know, I'm an integrated pest management specialist, and I'm excited as always to join you guys. And we will, I don't know what the theme is. It looks like it's just growing with my fellow growers, New Year 2024. But yeah, thanks a lot. So go ahead, Brendan. Tell us.
Okay, so the first thing that I would do is assess your situation. So if you have a small grow, you've used your soil over and over, is it in pots? Could you potentially put it into like a Rubbermaid tub and mix all that soil together from those different pots? Um, I think in your case, because I know what you're working with, I think the best case would be for you is to take all the soil from those pots and then just break it all up into a bin, mix it really thoroughly, and send that off as one sample. And then you'll be able to reamend your soil based off of the test results. And I currently use Logan Labs. And what I do is I get what's called a complete test. And a complete test is a standard soil and a saturated paste test. And it gives you a bunch of different data. And based off of that data, what I do is I'll give you a recipe based off of different mineral amendments or organic amendments if we're dealing with like nitrogen or phosphorus usually. And then I tell you, hey, this is, with the people that I work with, we hop on a phone call. I say, hey, this is what's going on in your soil. This is what I'm seeing. These are things you need to be aware of. If there's anything that's like that they need to be immediately aware of, let's say high sodium or something like that. I also recommend people get a water test when they do this so they could see the quality of their water. Some people assume that their water is good, and assumption can often lead to trouble. Um, that's why the data is really good. Test the water, see what it's at, because it could be high in sodium or chloride or bicarbonate or boron or any number of things. But yeah, it's really pretty simple. You just mix that soil sample together. If you had multiple pots that had plants in them, you could sample from multiple pots and mix that or homogenize it together, send it off as a single sample. That's what I would do. In my case, I mostly run beds. And so what I do is I take multiple samples from different locations in the bed and I mix that together.
What is the general cost for a single complete test like you're doing?
$55 for the lab tests, and I typically charge $50. And what that includes is a recipe, like a soil recommendation to bring the soil to nutritional sufficiency, make sure everything's balanced. And then I usually do like a 15-20 minute phone consult where we go over what's happening in the soil and then we build out the best fertigation program based off of the soil type and the soil nutritional levels.
So I'm in a peat-based soil, and I'm curious if, like, at this point, I'm in such a small grow. I've got two 1 gallon pots and then a single earth box. And it seems
Mhm.
like the best solution would be either to dump all that into a Rubbermaid, bust it up, homogenize it as much as I can, and then
Yeah.
sample that, and then re-amend that, and then work that into the pots. Or what I was thinking is maybe even just buying like a fresh bag of even just like, I know a while ago you had a recipe that I saved that's just like peat bale and then 40% aeration, which is like mostly pumice with some rice hulls, and
Yeah.
then a myriad of micro and macronutrients and things like that.
Yeah.
So do you think I'd be better off
Honestly,
spending 100 on testing or buying up the supplies?
no,
Because I think it's under a
I
100 bucks.
wouldn't, because you have such a small grow. So what I would do in your case is I would mix all that soil together, right? And then I would mix in some calcium sources, a little bit of magnesium. Don't go too hard on the magnesium, because magnesium and any of the amendments that are usually added in are highly soluble. And you can also get magnesium easily enough through spraying the plant, right? 1 tablespoon per gallon of water twice a week. Beautiful fucking results. And then you also want to make sure that you have a nitrogen source, but you're using amino acids. So what I would do is I would amend that soil, break it all down. I would add some really heavy calcium amendments, maybe some calcium silica is one, because that'll help stabilize pH. Because typically what happens is after several runs, your soil, especially because it's like a peat-based soil or even a cocoa-based soil that has a lot of organic matter in it, they naturally start to acidify. And so um, getting something in there like maybe some high calcium ag lime or the calcium silica, those both help to increase the soil pH. But then other things like bone meal, right? I would add some bone meal, maybe some gypsum, a little bit of Epsom salt, and maybe some a small amount of potassium sulfate or Agsil 16, and just kind of call it good. Monitor your nitrogen levels, and if you see any type of deficiencies, you can use that water soluble amino acids.
I had a thought there, but it kind of left me. I'm cleaning up and packing up my vaporizer over here, but um, I have some gypsum on hand, and I also have Calcil Plus from you as well. And
Perfect.
I was thinking it does seem like probably the best idea would just be to throw it all into like a tote, bust it up. The thing I was going to bring up was green sand is something that I've done some reading about for in situations like mine if I wasn't going to bust it all up as an amendment to help like aerate the soil, and also I think it might have some pH balancing effects, or maybe there's some other something like lime or something that might have been doing that. That was in the M3 initially, but I think that's even in the Michigan made mix or medical marijuana mix is a little bit of green sand to, I think, prevent compaction and just allow more aeration in the soil. Even with like a 40% ratio of aeration, I feel like after years and years, Smiley's Garden's done a lot of stuff in earth boxes and things like that. And he said after a while, eventually he goes through and busts up kind of the root blocks because it gets almost like clay-like or um, difficult. But it seems like Spartan, you also are growing in the city pickers. I'm curious, do you go like 1, 3, 5, 10 years? How long until you pull that main soil block out and then do something like we're talking about, like busting it apart and reamending it, or have you not had to?
Do the poor man's soil test, and that's when my plants stop performing in that media. Then I throw it in my compost pile out back for my vegetable garden, and I just get another bag of M3 and reset that. But generally, that doesn't happen very often, and it's like I would generally say that if I just reset one, put a brand new media in there, that's good for 5 years on average for me before I ever have to even worry about that kind of thing happening. And I've had some go double that, and well, maybe not double. I don't think I've done it for 10. I haven't been using them for 10 years, but approaching that anyway. And then I've had some that right at 5, they're like, yeah, ready. Something went wrong or something got imbalanced. Or if I get a fungal infection, like say something that's a something that's soil fungal infection, like I don't know, I can't think off the top of my head right now.
Pythium, maybe?
Yeah, maybe Pythium or there's another one, Fusarium or Fusarium, something like that. Then I'd probably be more apt to like, time to get this outside so the native microbes can beat the hell out of that Fusarium, because I don't want to play with that inside. But generally speaking, I would say if I had to average it, probably 5 years is what I'd expect.
Makes me
Without
feel
using
better.
soil sample tests and just adjusting off my own guessing is really, I guess, what it is.
That definitely makes me feel better. And even at 5 years, I think it's a lot better than a lot of us were doing for a little while, which is throwing it out every single run or mixing up batches of like super soil every single run and going with that method. And if we were resourceful, we would use it for like outdoor gardens or something. But I know people that just like dumped it in their yards or out in the woods or in dumpsters and things like that. So definitely not the most resourceful use of inputs there. And once I learned about like low till, no till, reamending, things like that, I was just like fascinated by the fact that like this one $50 bag of or whatever, like a couple bags of soil that can last me a few years, and I just small amounts of reamendments here and there. So that was really appealing to me from low cost, low effort, but still achieving really high quality up until it didn't. And that's the thing is like, I think even in cocoa or hydro or whatever other media, if I was running those right now, because the other things that are going on in life, just busier and work transitioning a little bit from one thing to another and other just, staying busy, but not having dedicated enough time for the garden as I should have ultimately reflecting back now. Um, it wouldn't have mattered necessarily. I think I actually would have been maybe worse off in cocoa because I'd be taking more time to like mix up the nutrients and like measure out all my things. And I don't have an automated system. I'm not automated watering. I don't have a reservoir. When I was doing cocoa, I was hand watering and like basically mixing up like a 1 to 3 gallon batch of water and then dosing that by watering it, hand watering with like a half-gallon watering can. So I think the earth box is actually the ideal solution for me at the current moment in time. It's just getting my veg back on track. I really liked I don't know who suggested it or if I just came across it, but using like a seed starter mix for my solo cups, just something like from your local garden center. And that got 100% germination, didn't have to like pre-soak or anything. I just planted them right into the soil, which a lot of people have said they've done for a long time. But I've tried everything from paper towels to the rapid rooters or root riot little cubes and um, lots of other methods to try and crack seeds, soaking them in a shot glass, uh, choosing the ones that float or the ones that sink. Different people have different opinions. I feel like most people go for the ones that sink, but ultimately, I think having a good soil or good media is really crucial for having successful grow. And if you don't monitor it as actively as you should, it can be easy to let it get off track a little bit. And I think even like 5 or 10% off where it should be, whether that's like too little or too much aeration or just not enough of magnesium or calcium or something vital can really set your grow back quite a bit because I'm noticing the lag in veg growth and some of the other things. So I also need to, like Okie Grower and many others and Spartan, Brandon, try out some of those humates that Brandon's got because the K humate, N humate, and all those other things, it's like they're saying they're only using it like once every 2 weeks or once a month or something like that. And with the amended soil, it's just like a nice little kick to make sure that everything's there and give you almost like the benefits of a chelated or chelated um, hydroponic or cocoa grow where you're getting those nutrients quickly available to the plant. But it seems to be doing really well. I know a lot of people are like, oh, once you give it the chelated stuff, then maybe it's going to be too lazy to send out the exudates and like work with the organics. But from what I see, all the plants, Brandon and Spartan, Okie Grower, and many others are crushing it with, seem to be doing just fine with a little bit of both. So I think that the plant is resilient and also resourceful. So it can operate with many different mechanisms of action on how it's getting the nutrient. Brandon, you're showing off a little bit of a, looks like a home grow over here. Are those
Yep.
your NutriPots? And maybe you can turn your camera to the side so we can go full screen. There it goes.
So, these ones back here, there's four of them. I was in Las Vegas and I ran into Nat from Humboldt Seed Company, and he gave me some of the triploid. The triploids you can grow outdoors and they won't accept pollen, so they won't ever produce seed. So he hasn't dropped these yet. And so I was like, man, I'm gonna fucking plant these before they fucking drop these things, before they even drop these. So I can have some stuff tested before the season starts. That way I can have a farm that I work with sell clones to people who want to do outdoor stuff. So that's what these little four are. And then all these ones that all look like kind of mutated.
That's an awesome idea, Brennan. I like that.
Yeah, well, because here's the thing,
They seem
dude.
like they're slower starting though. I mean, they're definitely. Or did you start them later?
No. These just got put in here today. I literally popped these like I popped the seeds and I put them in paper towels like 5 days ago. And so they were all tails and stuff ready to go, ready to get open and stuff. So I just put them in soil with the Nutri-Grow pot. But yeah, I'm just waiting because this will be huge because people are gonna want this stuff. And if I already have a tested, where I've gotten, data and terpene and potency tests back, I'll be able to make some money this season on cuts. And then all these ones that were mutated were old seeds. This is blueberry train mac. Blueberry. No, I'm sorry, blueberry train wreck times MK Ultra. It's one of the varieties that I used in the blueberry train mac. So they're starting to fix themselves. Here you can see that these other ones are kind of snapping out of their retardation or whatever the hell, hormonal imbalance or whatever the hell was going on with them. And then these are actually Limarilla F1s. So I just recently, because I have that Black Lime Reserve male, and I've done a bunch of different varieties with it, and I've grown them all out and stuff, and it's a really great male. And I finally just took it back to the Gorilla Glue 4 and made F1s V2, a version 2. And so I'm gonna test these out immediately because this is freaking awesome.
I was just gonna say that's exciting stuff right there, man.
Yeah, dude, if I can get anything close to what I had before. And then in here I just have a Limarilla, one of my breeder cuts, and then a sour cheese berry. And then in here, dude, something I haven't had in my garden for fucking years. But I grew this for about 12 years in San Diego. This is sour OG Kush.
I love sour OG. I still have a buddy who grows it.
Dude, so
Shit's strong, man. It's real strong.
yeah,
It's not the prettiest weed, but it's very strong smoke.
so pretty stoked. Yep, those are my two little veg tents.
So your Limarilla originally was a fem variety, right? It was you took
Yes.
female pollen onto a female plant, but now you've got a male selected, so this will be the first, of my knowledge, regular F1 variety, Limarilla, sort of V2.
Exactly. Yeah. So
It'll be much
the
much better
first
breeding stock.
yeah, the first the first one was a Gorilla Glue that turned on to Black Lime Reserve. And that was I was helping this older gentleman. It was his first time growing. The guy that had originally set him up and helped him get started dipped out. And so I was like, look, dude, you should just finish these off. They're gonna have seeds, but he was used to smoking Mexican weed anyway. So the weed was better than what he normally smoked, and then I ended up, started working that line. I started hunting through it, and it was fantastic. But now I'll be able to do a version 2, and if it's anything close to that original one, I'll be I'll be super stoked.
Notably, the terpenes and stuff are like off the charts, like 7 to like 11 or even 12% terpenes on some of those Limarilla original
Yeah,
um, fem cross. But I'm curious if the male is going to be able to bring that same level of high terpenes, and it seems like by all accounts it should be.
I'm gonna hunt through as many as I need to find the one. you know. And here's the cool thing. So I just recently it like everything that we do as far as growth and like kind of leveling up our character, so to speak, is really about networks. And I had a lab reach out to me. They're in Stillwater, and they work really closely with OSU. And they invited me out to tour the lab, and they're like, "We want this to be your lab." And so, I dropped off 6 different soil samples, 4 samples of
Yeah.
flower, and had leaf tissue analysis from my garden, and for some new soil mixes that we're doing. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm sending the same samples to 2 different labs. I'm sending them to Logan Labs and to this new lab, so that way we can look at their testing methodologies and their data points versus the other lab's data points. Because ideally, what I want to be able to do is have this lab be like my lab, because there's no downtime. I can drive there. It's an hour away from my house. I can drive samples there. I can drive other people who I work with samples there, or they can even get picked up. And I can do a lot of really cool science, and they're not, we'll be working together, kind of like I'll be advertising for them, essentially, like, hey, this is a lab that I'm using. This is what they're capable of doing. And so they don't
Right.
mind. And so they don't mind doing, work for me. And like, they love me coming in there and bringing them flour and like and bringing in soil. They're enthusiastic about it. So
Brandon, let's be honest. Have you ever recently brought flour to anybody who wouldn't be enthusiastic that you're bringing them flour, man? Coming from you?
uh, nope. I mean, everybody's pretty stoked, man. In fact,
That's what I mean.
when I went out to New York, I wish I would have had some flour with me, for real.
Well, that's not doesn't say much for New York. What do you mean, man? Or you just saying you met a lot of people? I hope you're not saying that you couldn't find good flour out
There was
there.
a lot of people there, dude. The turnout was huge. I wasn't expecting it, you know what I mean? Because I played in punk rock bands and shit when I was like a teenager, and I played punk rock shows, and we'll have like 12 people there, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, this is embarrassing. But like
Yeah, yeah.
when you fill up an entire warehouse full of people, it's like,
Yeah,
fuck yeah, this is awesome.
that's badass, man.
It's the best industry to be in right now. I think it's got its challenges and its difficulties, but when you bring people together like that, it's rare to find happiness and joy like a fucking cannabis event where everybody's cool, having fun, sharing good joints, good flower, passing jars around, smelling stuff that their buddies grew, showing off the best stuff that they grew. It's just like
Yeah.
that atmosphere is magic.
Speaking
Yeah,
of
Ken.
which, Jack, there's going to be an event near you on the 14th.
Mhm.
Do you want to tell us more, or is it a private event?
Yeah, it's the Farmers Cup. Farmers Cup. Do I have that info? I think I do have that info actually.
I was invited.
Uh, hmm?
I was
Are you
invited by one of the representatives recently.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, starting at 11 a.m.
they invited me out too, but I was like, man, it's too short of notice for me.
Yeah, I have to agree. I have to agree that sometimes I get those requests a lot more closer to the event than I would think. You know what I'm saying? But
Last second
yeah, I mean, if
stoner
you,
passing it on. Logic right
I
there.
know, right? It's a cultural quirk, I guess.
Yeah, it
But yeah, and
happens.
I'll be speaking at the event talking about safe growing as home growers, and also being a little scrupulous about what you get from commercial. Because actually, if you guys didn't hear, Grizzly Peak Grizzly Peak Farms, is that the name? I want to make sure I'm not saying the name right, but they got a recall recently for chlorphenapir or something like that. That was not great. So yeah, just as a reminder, And also, I had somebody remarking to me recently, Russell Pace from the Cannabis Horticultural Association, that like you go on these like Facebook groups and like social media channels where people are ostensibly trying to help each other. Nothing wrong with that, but you'll get like a spider mite picture and somebody's like, what do I do? And they'll be like malathion. And it's like, oh my God, so bad.
Burn the whole
Don't
grow
do that.
down.
Yeah, or burn the
That
whole well, but like, well, smacking it with like a real noxious pesticide and then being like, oh well, the spider mites went away and the plant's healthy, so it must be great, right? But it's not. So be
You're like, yeah,
discerning,
you
everyone. Like,
almost
I know we
shot
talk
that.
about it a lot, but just yeah.
I remember the
Anyways.
first time I saw a video. It was a long, long time ago, but it made me laugh so hard. But it was someone using a shop vac to suck all the webs from the spider mites off of their
That's a
weed.
common technique, dude. I see way too many people. It's semi-effective, I guess, by some's account, but I would choose that as maybe the last on the list of things that I would try.
Beast.
Matthew, what do you think about that? Shop vacuuming off spider
I hope
mites.
you don't have that grainy trikes because
Yeah,
you'll be
I
stuck in
mean,
all of them, man.
I've talked about it before, but like Rincon Vitova, which is a company that actually went out of business last year, the year before last. Sad because they made a lot of like entomology oriented equipment, which nobody makes stuff for such people, really. Um, they have like a massive vacuum system that they would use in like I want to say like strawberry or alfalfa or something like in the field for specific pests like ligus. But yeah, I'm not really recommending it. All that's to be said, I wouldn't use it in cannabis. I don't think that's really very effective. And if you're at a point, I mean, you should try to plan. Planning for a problem is not planning to fail. It's just a realistic thing you should do. But yeah, you should definitely plan for having not letting it get to that point. You know what I mean? So.
On the opposite end of gardening vacuum, I saw kind of like a gardening cannon being implemented. It wasn't cannabis, but at large scale, maybe it could be used. I can appreciate this because I grew up fucking shoveling mulch or pitchforking mulch and know how backbreaking that labor can be. And this guy had this hose over his neck and it was just like hooked up to his truck that had like a whole bunch of mulch and it was just like pumping it out of like a hose. And he was just basically like spraying it all over the flower beds and just walking around with it like effortlessly. I was like, goddamn, technology in
One of
gardening.
those that reminds me of one of those machines that you use to spray insulation in your attic. I wonder if it's something similar to that. That would be cool.
Oh yeah, especially if you've ever rolled out insulation yourself and weren't wearing proper PPE and were itchy for probably several days from all the
Oh, I fucking hate
fiberglass.
it. Fiberglass is the worst. Insulation, man. I don't know how those guys do it, man. I've done it a couple times. I was like, this is a fucking goddamn nightmare.
You got to wear proper full, gloves and long sleeves and respirators and eye
I,
protection, everything.
so I'm so
Shit gets
glad
into your eyeballs.
in the build at the Tricom Forge, we went with the foam. I'm so glad we go with the foam. It's so much nicer. Those guys come in and get it all done, and it's just like better than you could ever dream of doing, in my opinion.
It's definitely I've seen people that hook up like even like older units. I saw like somebody did their like upper garage and it was like an older unit, but they just went in there, spray foamed it, and it was like rock fucking solid for years, and they were just killing it, pumping pounds out of that thing, and it was just like I was shocked at how well it turned out and how quick. It's gotta love technology when it's implemented properly. It can definitely be at a cost if you don't get the right contractors working for you, but it's worth it in the long run. I think quality is cheaper in the long run. And for something like the Tricom Forge, it seems like you guys went with like the FRP panels even after the spraying, so that way you could keep it clean more easily and not have to worry as much about like molds, mildews. A lot of people don't realize that like drywall, wood, a lot of the common
Yeah.
building materials are not great for growing anything indoors, but especially cannabis, where lots of water, moisture, humidity in the air and around. So be cautious of your building materials for sure.
I'm getting feedback from chat that my microphone is low, so I've made some adjustments. Hopefully that fixes it.
I think you sound a little bit better now, and I think one of the panelists said that maybe a little bit earlier as well. So they
Yeah.
probably are right on that. Brandon, going back a little bit to a point you made earlier, you said you're going to do a big hunt of the Limarilla, and I'm curious, like, what do you consider like a good hunt when you're popping seeds? Like, how many plants do you grow out from the initial seed crack to how many actually make it to harvest, ideally? And like, do you do multiple runs? Do you do one mega run? Like, what's your strategy there?
Yeah, I mean, it's not big. It's relatively small because I'm just doing this at home, but I've got probably a dozen, and then I'll have, I'd like to do at like 12 at a time at least. Put 12 in a bed. So that means I have to pop maybe 20 to 24 to get proper female ratio. Um, so what I did is if you saw the video earlier, I had all the little Farmer Freeman sex tests. I sent those out already. I'm waiting back. Um, I put as many as I could fit in this little 2x2 tent, and I have essentially these little 4x4 cups. So if you do the math, you can figure out how many I got in there. That's about it. I'm gonna just keep running these in 1 gallon because I can move them around, and I can do more plants, kind of sea green style, under the light that way. Some stuff though will get run in beds, so I'll test some of this stuff. Will get put in beds, and the reason why is because I'm working a couple of lines right now, and I want to find some of the best females. So, like right now, I have Blueberry Train Max F2s. I've grown them a bunch of times, but I'm doing another hunt out on them, and I'm hunting through something, and I'm looking for something specific. So that whole bed is filled with nothing but Blueberry Train Max females. And if I don't find what I want out of that population, I'll move on to the next population. But all those plants are all backed up in cloned farm, right? So I have them in. I took clones, I put them in a little Nutri-Grow pot, put them in another little tent, and they're backed up, right? If something good comes out of that, I'll save that one clone. I'll put that at my homeboy's farm, and we'll be like, okay, so this will be the one that we're going to use to like, get into commercial production. Here's the test results on it, and I'll you know partner up with one of my people to do clone sales. We'll do a limited drop of like clones or something like that, where someone could like, a farm can come in. They'll maybe one or only let one or two people to have it, so it's kind of more exclusive. And I'm just going to keep hunting stuff out. But ideally, what I'm looking for is a terpene profile and a flavor profile as I move forward into the F3s.
Good stuff, and I'm excited to see what ends up coming out of these basically V2 Limarillas because I think that there's a lot of potential in there. I'm a big fan of, like Spartan mentioned, I think the regular seed stock offers a lot of genetic potential for a number of reasons, and whether it's Y-linked stuff, finding your own male and then being able to work more with it, like taking it down to the F2, F3, or even just finding a really unique female and then holding on to that cut. Both
Yeah.
are great options. And it sounds like with even just a hunt of, 12 in a bed, you can get a good idea, or 1 gallons and things like that, of sort
And
of
I'll
some
be
of the flavors. And
able to take it different directions too, because I have that sour, that sour double, that sour OG. We call it sour OG, but it's sour double. So I could take it back into the Gorilla Glue as well. So I'm gonna do some work on that line. The thing too is I ran out of the original seeds, and I have no more. I have the F2 breeder cut. That's the last plant of that initial whole thing from 2015 or whatever, 2016. And then I have just the crosses of it.
it's the way things go and kind of more micro breeding. Like we're not breeding full greenhouses or anything. It's home scale and craft. You're picking some of the best stuff that you can work with and advancing from what I feel like was really amazing homegrown selection, although it was accidental initially. Josie kept the GG4, and that's still to this day, I think, whenever I have the option, I'm like, let's get some GG4. It's always good. Like I haven't come across GG4 that I didn't enjoy. Even like I'm not huge on dispensary grown stuff, but when traveling and low or whatever, or just trying to see what's available and get updates, like I go a few times a year just to see what the state of affairs is like, more so than out of necessity. But yeah, it's just GG4 is one that almost always rings my bell. Like 99 out of 100 times that I've tried it, I've been like, damn, I'd smoke that again. And the other stuff, it's like 80 to 90% of the stuff, I'm just like, I'm good with that one and done. I'm not rebuying that. So
I have a jar of GG4, a big old jar, and it's so good. And it's like it looks so fucking good. It's hard for me to fucking break it all up, pull the seeds out of it.
I love strains that you've grown for long enough that just looking at the bud structure in the jar, you can guess what it is. And then just to confirm it, then you unscrew that lid and you take a whiff and you're like, okay, yep, this is what it is. Without even smoking it or anything like that, you know exactly, yep, that's the strain.
There's a lot of relabeling going down in the California market right now because like the grower sells it to a distributor and then the distributor can rename it legally in our market here currently. That's the state of affairs in the legal market. So you might grow Blue Dream and then they could call it Blueberry Yum Yum or even just call it like OG Kush. Like it's that crazy. They don't have to
What
pay any
happens to the
respects.
COA for the testing analysis for that variety? Doesn't that have to match the what they're selling?
The percentages do, the name does not.
Really?
Yep.
Oh,
They
that's
have the
weird.
COA, the batch number. So if you look it up, it'll say like Blue Dream. But
Oh,
on the jar, it might say like Yum
oh,
Yum or something.
they can just fucking yeah. That sucks.
Jeez.
Call it Mac
I mean,
One
on the one
because that's what
hand,
sells.
I mean that's
The
it's
beauty
kind
of
of
white label.
unfortunate. On the other hand, how would you enforce that?
Here's the thing,
I
though,
mean, I know you
too.
could,
That's just
but
been going on. That's just been going on forever, anyway. Though, motherfuckers
forever.
renaming shit forever.
Well,
I
and
used to
people don't
sell.
even know. They got the wrong cut, right? They get a fake cut of Blue Dream and they're calling it Blue Dream when it's really not Blue Dream. Like
I
anybody
really
who's
wonder how many people, although people know this already about me, but yeah, I always wonder. People are like, "Oh, you ever had this?" I'm like, "Maybe, pretty sure, I
from which
think."
breeder? There's Punch from at least three breeders right now. And like I just got that from my buddy and like worked it down to the F3. But there's two or three other notable breeders that I'm aware of that have Velvet Punch as well. And it's like two very common words, right? Velvet and punch. Purple punch is a big cross. I'm pretty sure almost all of those have a purple punch parent or a purple punch cross. That's one of the parents that they kept the punch name because a lot of medical users like to have some sort of reference back. Like I personally like that, but I've also got strains that are just like kind of a random name that more describes an effect and things like that. So it's difficult. I think that 2020 Mendocino said, um, it's really down to putting your breeder name on it because everybody can have a song called Purple Rain, but everybody thinks of Prince when you hear Purple Rain. Somebody else can, they shouldn't call their stuff Lamarilla because that's like a made up slash combination of words that's actually unique. So Brandon could have like trademark or copyright or patent on that actual name because it's not like red, blue, green, or whatever, like common words that are already out there. It's a sort of made up combination where Velvet Punch or Purple Rain, those are all words that are in the common lexicon. Everybody can use them. So even though somebody else might put out a song called Purple Rain, everybody knows for the most part, Prince is the one who made Purple Rain, right? And it's like 2020 Mendocino has a lot of really interesting and unique strains. Like if somebody else put out Avenue of the Giants or something like that, I'd be like, okay, that's they're ripping off Adam and the team over at 2020.
We should get Adam back on again. I'm sure he'd be happy to come on. He's been working autos a lot lately. I bet he has some good information for us.
He's awesome, man. I listened to some of those old breeders collectives. We only did like 5 or 6 of them, but he would come on and drop fucking knowledge. And he's one of those guys who's actually doing it at the greenhouse scale. And in the California legal market, he's doing a lot of difficult things. And I have a lot of respect for him. So I know that he's a busy guy as well as many of us, but it's cool to see. It's not to say that any one market is more impressive than another. I love to see people in Michigan, Oklahoma, and wherever doing it and doing it well. I just think he's one of the, I think a handful of good people that are out there really pursuing the passion and keeping the craft alive.
And shares it. That's what I like about it too. Is shares it. And like one small example, and I'll stop tooting and his horn. Dude's cool though. When Ohio went legal, he had a promotion where if you were in Ohio and you were a home grower that could contact him and he'd send you free seeds. And I know people who got the seeds in the mail, so I know that it was legit. So shout
He
out to
inspired me to do the same. Shit, that's why I sent
yeah.
out a bunch of packs to Ohioans. I was like, shit, I'm from there. If he's doing it, I need to do it too. Because shout out to my homies in Ohio and all the growers. One guy's even like, I want to get a pack for my buddy in XYZ state that's right next door or whatever. And I don't know if they're quite legal yet, but I was like, fuck it, I'll send 2 packs to you, buddy. Like, and I got DMs from both of them. Like, thank you so much. We're popping it X date or whatever. And it's cool to help people
That's
out.
so
One,
cool. I
one
love
less
that.
expense, get them in the grow, especially when they go legal. And a lot of people wait for that. I was working with other groups, but I didn't have my own full setup myself until it was technically soon to be legal. I started a little bit early, but I do think that if the law is unjust, sometimes you gotta, civilly disobey, and that was sort of
It's your
the
duty to.
it is, and I believe that it's definitely something that a lot of people have done for many many years, and you know at least in the US, we have some right to privacy. And so doing it indoor, you had a lot of control over a lot of stuff. And it provides a lot of freedom and knowledge, I think, that is useful for other things. And with all that said, I know I've been jibber jabbing a lot. I want to throw it back to Noah the grower and see how you're doing over there.
Doing good. I'm just listening to you guys, and yeah, that's the American way, man. If a law is unjust, sometimes you gotta, like you said, privacy and all that good stuff. And I hope all the growers out there luck. And yeah, it's awesome. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. And like you said earlier, there's nothing better than showing up a jar of something that's really terpy and really skunky, and people are impressed. That's always a great feeling. That feeling never goes away for me, at least.
What are you smoking on tonight, Noah?
Right now, I got duct tape and a little bit of this apple fritter, this Lumpy's cut apple fritter. I've gotten it twice, cut it once, and then I cut it again this time, and then of course this time it turned out really good. So, but that's kind of a finicky plant. You have to really hit it on everything. One thing's off, and it just won't color up. It won't, the heads on the THC glands aren't as good as you would want them to be. So that's kind of a finicky plant. But when it hits, it hits.
I just had a really good cross. It was actually one of the ones that I was referencing when I was referring to cocoa being really fire, and it was it's called Pink Ritz, which I would have thought had some sort of runts in it, but it's actually apple fritter crossed with Gelato 33, which I believe you said is called the Larry Bird as well, and I think that's Larry Bird's number, so that makes sense. But that shit was fire, man. It was stony as hell. I had great flavor, so
Yes.
impressed the hell out of me, and that Lumpy's cut is definitely I think the apple fritter that everybody kind of praises. Seems to, if you do dial everything in, yield fairly well and have some pretty potent, terpy, tasty buds, which always good things there.
Yeah, it's a good yielder. It definitely is, and it is, it is pretty terpy. It's just not on the level of like duct tape to me, or like GG4, or some of these other ones I got, like my gelato cross with 33 cross. I love that one. So it's also just a personal preference too. So
The nose to me is such a huge deal. Like the whole white labeling thing out here where they change names. I'll know. Tyson Farms did one, they called it like the Toad. And I was like, this is either GG4 or it's got a lot of GG4 in it, or like chem or whatever it was. Because I smelt it and it's just like, it's undeniable. Like it is when you get to like the stuff, especially, the smell is so distinct. And I said that a little about biscotti and some of the gelatos as well. They're really difficult to even put in it. I hate it when people say that, but um, for the GG4, to me, what stands out is like it's pretty chemy. Like it has almost like a chemical type smell, but then that's mixed with like some pine or earthy, almost like metallic, like a metal, like aluminum or something, but not quite. And sometimes there's touches of like chocolate, which I found that is actually very rare in my experience. But I always get that like really chemy, slightly earthy pine dankiness from it. Curious, Spartan, I know you grow it a lot. What do you get from the
I
aroma?
don't currently hold it right now, but I could always get back. But for me, the best way to say that is kind of reverse thinking, but my mind works that way. When I'm smoking something that I'm told is GG4, the thing that's missing in the ones that I most commonly find, and I think they're not GG4 when they tell me they are, is those pine notes. So the fake GG4 to me is usually what stands out when I'm smoking it is it's missing the pine. Like you were saying when you're explaining, it's like pine and sometimes chocolate or earthy. But to me, the it's like gassy pine, I guess, is what I would like if I had to give you just two major terps.
Gassiness is one that I definitely didn't hit. Like that's mixed in for me with the chemi. Like those are the two top notes. It's definitely got like to me almost all good weed or like a lot of stuff that has like OG or chem backing has like a little bit of that gas behind it. At least out here, like there's a lot of gas, like people that are just like I need gas. It's gas or nothing. And I feel like GG4 ticked enough of that box that it can appease to those people. Plus the high is just so medically therapeutic. It's hits your body undeniably and it is a pain reliever. But Brandon, I know you've also got a lot of experience with the GG4. What kind of aroma and smell
I
do you
have
think you
some
put
in
it
my
on?
hand. Have some in my hand right now, actually. It's really hard to describe if we're being honest because not so much pine that I get, but I do kind of get this earthy musk, but it's also kind of acrid, where it's like it also has kind of like those chocolatey coffee notes to it as well. So it's kind of got a bunch of different stuff in there, in my opinion. But it's it's hard to really like put a solid description in terms of just like a distinctive flavor. Like it's like I could say strawberry and you would know what that is, or banana and you would know what that is, blueberry. But Gorilla Glue, it's it's got some interesting earthy, woody, chocolatey. It's also again, and it's also really, musky and acrid as well.
From a distance, I feel like it almost smells skunky through like a bag, or like if somebody was smoking it in the next room, I might be like, oh, that's a little skunky. Oh, there's Dr. MJ jumping in.
And it has kind of, as it grows, to a kind of unique bud structure, slightly unique bud structure.
I love it, dude. It's all prickly,
It's all
you know.
prickly, yeah, it's all prickly, but it doesn't really get real leafy either.
Cheers,
Yeah,
Dr. MJ. Welcome in.
great.
Hey guys, I made it. I made it here. Sorry I'm late.
No worries. We're just kind of chilling. It's New Year's. Happy New Year to you. And we're
You.
talking a little bit about GG4, which is actually one that I know you've got
I wonder if I could,
experience with.
I
They're
wonder if
talking
I
about the
could
bud
share it.
structure, but I was
I
going to
wonder-
get everybody's thoughts on the aroma. So I'll pass it to you since you just got here, and then we'll have Noah describe his thoughts on the smell or even the flavor of GG4. And we were all saying it's kind of hard to describe, but I'd be curious what you
Yeah,
think.
this smell. I
Top
mean,
few notes.
nothing jumps off at me. I grew GG4. I got a few clones from a dispensary in LA. I'm pretty sure it was like the GG4. I love the plant. I loved smoking the plant. I don't really, I mean, it's been a few years. I don't remember the smell wasn't really sort of particularly remarkable or unique, I guess. So I don't even feel comfortable kind of commenting on the smell. Um, it's interesting. I'll go back in my notes though. I definitely took good notes back in those days.
You guys
Noah,
see?
yeah, I can see that. That's the one that's knocked up with the Black Lime Reserve, right?
No, yeah, this has seeds in it, but this is the Gorilla Glue. Is the camera clear? I can't really tell.
It's kind of going in and
It's
out,
going in
but
and out, but yeah, you can
you can
definitely see
tell
the spikiness of it.
it's not the tightest golf ball nug. It's not a cookie nug structure by any means.
No, but it's you can
Almost like a
kind of see
very,
it.
it's not foxtailed, but it's got that kind of more open bud structure that some people will call it a foxtail. And if you grow it in a really hot environment or too much light or
Like
things like that, it
fingers
can.
or pillars or something. There's like projections outward, kind of.
Exactly. It kind of coils around. I think they're beautiful buds personally. Some people don't love that look, but
I love
it's
it.
one that has highly appealed to me for a long time. Noah, what kind of smells and flavors do you get when you grow and smoke the GG4?
Well, it depends on the run, but normally I would always say it just I can always smell the chem, I can always smell the gas. Like I'm growing it right now. I'm like I just looked at like day 31 from Flip to Flower 1212. So and I always have it. I actually did cut it, and everybody I'd go over their house, they're always like, "Where's the jar of the GG4?" And I'm like, "Oh, I've been just growing the duct tape that's across of it," and then they weren't having it, so I missed it too, so I got it. And this is actually my first run with it in like maybe like 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months. But yeah, it would always it'll I would always say that you can kind of smell a little bit of a like a citrus kind of, but it's always to me it's always smelled more like a gas.
It's a great one. And rest in peace to the legend, Josie Wales, who I believe the only interview he ever did was on this very podcast. I re-uploaded it for anybody who hasn't checked that out. It's on this channel. So he was definitely a pillar in this community in a sense, and awesome, really down to earth dude, and spread something far and wide that is still amazing to this day.
Yeah, I want to grow it again. I think I should go grab a clone of it. I've been thinking about that. There was the clone only variety of Skywalker OG that I grew from that dispensary that I really like that variety too. I've been on seeds for a long time, but it's fun to get some of those known genetics every once in a while and grow them out and see what you can do with them in your own garden.
Especially now when you can now start getting, I know even here in Michigan, there's places where you can source tissue culture clones that you know are 100% clean, starting with a clean slate. So, I mean, that's almost good, almost as good as a seed that's been selected somehow beforehand.
I think better in some regards because you're getting a reference point to the culture. Like we're all talking about it right now,
Yeah.
revering it in a way. We could pop maybe 1,000 seeds in our lifetime and never find a GG4. I think that personally you will. You'll find some really fire shit. It might not get the world acclaim GG4 got. It might be better to you or for you for whatever reason. You're picking strains that you think, oh, I've tried this and that, or I think I might like this and that. And then that combination, you start hunting through and finding phenos that you like the smell, the growth pattern, yields, and things like that that end up working for you. But that GG4 wasn't like the only one that they popped, that was just the very best one and the one that ended up going around and really capturing the imagination of the whole community. And to the point, I almost think that like the lawsuit made it like the whole next level, having gone
Yeah,
through
I
like
agree.
it made him
That
like the official, other people might call their stuff GG4, but like, yeah, it's Josie Wales. He's no longer with us, but that cut, everybody knows. If you do a few seconds of research, it should trace back to that person, not, whoever S1'd it and is selling it as GG4 seeds right now.
was always the interesting thing though about that story. Like there were several plants that were grown from that cross and from that sort of, serendipitous cross. Um, he ended up giving away lots of cuts of number 4 and sort of freely giving away cuts of number 4, which at the time he thought was the best, and sort of sharing that, and everybody shared it broadly. As a social scientist, one of the things that I'm fascinated is why did that kind of catch on? What sort of sparked everybody's imagination so much? Because there's a lot of really good cannabis strains, right? But like some of them, like you're saying, Jack, kind of capture our imagination and kind of run away with themselves like that. But then when he wanted to come back and sort of make it as a business, he couldn't make a business around GG4 because it had been so sort of widely distributed that he was trying to sort of make a business around GG1, the first, or the one of the other plants that had come out of that cross. And that's always kind of stuck in my head and thinking about, as breeders, sort of what we should do with genetics and how breeders make money or what they contribute to this sort of overall thing. And then why did it sort of become so famous or so popular to begin with? Just an interesting case.
I think partially it was so good and partially the access was there. It got the hype in the right magazines like High Times and others kind of picked it up. It won a few cups in notable areas like Southern California in the early-ish days of genetics being passed freely. Because I'd say pre-2010, a lot of people were really, really, really tight to the vest with their cuts. That
Sure.
whole I'm going to hold this and charge you $5,000 to $15,000 for a cut was like the commonplace back in that early cookie era and other stuff like that. So, and even like OG was only held within their circle, right? And it wasn't something they freely passed. Like that was their ticket, like their golden ticket. The Slimer Pheno was literally called the golden ticket. And
Yeah.
although it gets out like a lot of good stuff in time, it for a period of time was sort of an exclusive thing. And I think
Yeah,
that
I
he
guess.
went against the grain by handing it out like in Michigan, in California, and all. He was like Kyle Cushman. Everyone thinks he did the strawberry cough, although he didn't. And he says all the time, I didn't make it. He carried it and passed it to so many people. People
Right.
call it Kyle Cushman strawberry cough because he kept it alive. He distributed it and he made it world famous.
When somebody gives me a plant, it's like I call it the plant that person gave me, right? Not whoever like originally did the cross or whatever. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense like that. Um, yeah.
I think like Brandon mentioned earlier, Nat from Humboldt Seed Company, he got some triploid, and I'm pretty sure he didn't invent or even discover it, but he gets a lot of genetic material. Like he worked with some freak show type stuff that he's made available to the public. He's also, I think, now planning on doing these triploid to make for outdoor cultivators, basically non-pollinatable crops that Brandon's got his first run of, and he's going to try and hunt out and get clones to the Oklahoma community and maybe other places. But I think that genetic resource sharing is like the way that we should go. And even though
Yeah.
Josie technically would have a harder time, like when he did genetics or whatever, and he was doing the GG1 and the GG5 and uh, Glucci and all of these other things that he was licensing. I think that even just the having like the name of I'm the original and like getting pennies per pound or whatever that they sell and saying like this is verified by GG Genetics was enough for certain groups to do it, like in Canada and some of the legal markets here in the US. But
Yeah.
it was still
I
difficult because once it's out, the genie is out of the bottle, right? So I think most people knew that that one was sort of open
was
season.
never a big fan of the licensing deal. I'll just say that straight up. I think that when you license something, it means that I own this thing and I'm going to let you use it and sort of use it for your business as long as you pay me a percentage. The idea of owning a crop genetic resource in that sense is almost problematic to me. I mean, I understand sort of the thoughts of sort of breeding seeds and selling the seeds, but licensing the genetics is just sort of a different level of, you know.
What
sort
if
of
they're
making
paying for a seal of an authenticity?
What's that?
What if they're just paying for a seal of authenticity?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I have a problem building a business around forcing people to pay just for you to tell them that it's authentic or for you to license the right to do something with genetics like that. Because I don't really believe that you own the genetics in the first place. Like, you know, you put the last cross together or whatever. I'm not sure that I want to concur that that gives you ultimate sort of intellectual property rights over those genetics, that nobody else can use them without paying you a fee for it.
What about like when they breed stuff like grapes or corn to like the F7 and then they truly make a quote unquote unique variety that they put years
Or
and
like for
years in?
They tend to
resistance, like
sell
that
those
costs a lot of
as
money.
F1 hybrids, guys. And if you're fully allowed to save the seeds, but the seeds just aren't going to be as good next year. So farmers in mass choose to go back and buy F1 seeds every single time. Like corn farmers all buy F1 seeds every single year. They could all save their F2s and regrow them, but they're not going to be as consistent. They're not going to be as good. So that's something that the seed companies have actually sort of, you know, by the way that they're designing crops. And there's room to do that in cannabis, 100%. We could make, you know, really viable F1 seeds that farmers, the F2s just aren't going to be as good as the F1s. And that's different than like, you know, a couple decades ago, the Terminator technology, genetic modification, which will make the F2 generation sterile basically through genetic modification. That's really different than just creating a hybrid that's just not as good if you cross it again. And I own the original P plants. I own P1, P2. I cross them. I'm the only one that can make F1 seeds. Then it's the physical ownership of the two parent plants and the ability to cross them to make those seeds that is sort of what you're bringing to the table, and you're making those seeds is what's bringing it. But if anybody can take cuttings, and like that whole plan is, you know, the facility is going to own the mother plants. They're going to be responsible for growing the mother plants. And every time they take a cutting off of their mother plant, they've got to pay a licensing fee back to the company that owns the. I've never liked that. I mean, I understand it, but it's just never struck me as sort of the right way to manage the genetic property.
I mean, I definitely agree with the sentiment.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the things that like the hot plate and viroid problem, which will continue to be a problem for a while longer, I'm sure. You know, I was remarking to myself, and many people have also realized that like like especially with the recent research that shows that it can be in other plants like cucumbers and chrysanthemum and tobacco and Thale cress or Arabidopsis, which is a model plant that we use in research all the time. Um, you know, it's not going to be like it's kind of it would be really highly bio insecure to like do what a lot of people have been doing, which is freely sharing cuts and things like that. Whether you're a nursery or a person. I'm not saying somebody's a bad person for doing that, but at least on the passive side, if by receiving cuts, and if you don't have the means to like test, then it could be really a real problem potentially. Um, I was also reading about a tomato cultivar from Japan called Ruby, but the I is like a diacritical mark, like a line over it, as a stylistic choice, I guess. And I guess it's like a super duper high quality, quickly quickly ripening tomato. Apparently, it's really good. I never had it. But I wonder for like quality crops like that, there's a lot of research and money that goes into the breeding program for that. Like, should those people be compensated? I guess it's a different kind of plant, but do you think there's a pathway for that with cannabis,
They
like with
usually are.
resistance breeding and that kind of thing?
Well, that's why most of these things are hybrids. So I bet those tomatoes are hybrid seeds. And
Probably.
yeah, I mean, that's how most of this stuff is protected, because hybrids are actually better in a lot of ways. They have heterosis usually, so added vigor, as opposed to an
I
inbred
think they
lot.
have like genetic effects that past the heterosis, they're still active.
What's that?
Well, I don't think it's just the heterosis that you're getting with the ruby cultivar.
No, it's not, but you get that in a hybrid. You could
Oh, for
probably get
sure, yeah.
the same sort of arrangement of traits in an inbred line. So oftentimes you can breed open pollinating varieties, or you can breed hybrids, and you can sort of go at that with a lot of crops either way. If you do it with open pollinating varieties, then there's more variation in the population, but there's more consistency generation to generation. So you save seeds and you replant the seeds, and there's some variation amongst individuals, but not very much variation between generations. If you go to sort of the hybrid route, then you have massive variation between generations. So the parent generation is nothing like the F1 generation, and the F2 is much worse than the F1 generation. But in that F1 generation is remarkable consistency. So it's kind of the opposite phenomena there. And with a lot of crops, it just makes more sense to breed hybrids because you'll have more control over the seeds down the line. So a lot of the commercial seed breeding programs have kind of gone in that direction for all crops.
But do you think they like I guess it's very different in ag, of course.
That's
People aren't
it.
really
There's a
just like
really
giving out their
valuable.
tomato.
I've got a Patreon subscriber that breeds asparagus seeds and sells really high value asparagus seeds in the specialty crop market. The way they control that is they've got the two plants that they're crossing to get those seeds, and nobody else can make the seeds because they control the two individual plants that are creating those seeds.
But if somebody got access, for example, a worker worked on that farm, took a cutting of it, quit, walked home with it in their glove, rooted it, and then started using that cutting, that farm would sue them for using their genetic
Right?
material. So that's,
It would sue them for literal theft of material from the farm.
but yeah, and it's like, I think even if you buy, I saw this was an issue in grapes. They didn't breed far enough.
Yes. Yeah.
It was like University of California, whoever, against one of the big grape people, and there is clearly patented genetics and crop resources that are controlled. And just
Absolutely.
because the F2 isn't as good doesn't mean that the people aren't taking certain cuttings.
Well, they're
And then,
actually trying to get the P generations, and those examples of like espionage and theft, they try to go get the parent genetics so that you can start making your own crosses.
it's like the
And
pink pineapple, they cut
that's
the
where the
top off.
intellectual property is in most seed companies. It's both the specific germplasm lines, so like your particular plants, and knowledge of which crosses create sort of the the good hybrids. And that's what a lot of seed companies do. They randomly cross these inbred plants, and 999 out of 1,000 of them are duds, and then they get one that's sort of a wild success, and then they keep making that one and selling that one.
It's interesting because like you see the pink pineapples get sold with no tops of them. They're usually just sold with the bottom only, and it's protection of genetics is certainly an interesting place in not just cannabis, but other ag and horticulture. And
Yeah, and there's a lot of those weird things, but my main point was just I didn't like the licensing model, specifically sort of saying like, this is mine, and if you want to use it, pay me X amount per plant or per month or whatever.
I agree. It gets a little unfortunate because we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, even the people who made the pink pineapple and the grape or whatever, or the blackberry, whatever fruit, veg you want to pick, corn. Everybody is working off of, I mean, like in corn, like Native Americans work from hundreds of years ago, right? And then narrowing it down and changing and altering it for our current needs and desires. But
Right.
at some point, yeah, as human beings with capitalism, we're going to claim ownership and start to make money off of it one way or another. And um, it's
Right.
at
That's
least people are still
exactly
doing it
it,
with
Jack.
nature in some regards. Like there's a lot of other
There's
synthetic
been
ways that I
literally
think
millions of years of crosses, right, happening that built up to yours. You do the last one and you're like, haha, it's mine. I own it now. It's like, come on, you did the last step of like this million step process, and it doesn't belong to you necessarily. I mean, we're grateful for your step, but yeah.
that's why I think there is like a certain amount of change that has to be percent. And I don't know the exact number of crosses or how much uniqueness, but for like it can't be out in the common already. So like if it's already pre-existing art, right, so to speak, like if that grape already exists or if this cannabis already
Right.
exists and somebody else already has like the DNA out there, you can't claim copyrights or patents and things like that. So it's sometimes difficult because with cannabis, it's only recently become documentable with technology and legalities. So a lot of this stuff doesn't exist in the early patent work and in prior art because no one was able to legally get this on paper in most areas of the world. So we're coming into a place where I think like one or two big groups basically tried to like patent everything, and there's groups that are fighting back against it. Like medicinal genomics has like a type 2 variety, I think like CBD and THC that has like the main terpene isn't myrcene. I think it's called Jamaican Lion, but that's just like one example that breaks some of these copyrights that are saying like we own the patent to this, this, and that, and they're trying to do broad sweeping patents and things like that, which I'm absolutely against because what made cannabis great for so many years is
Yeah.
the fact that we were stewards of it. People everywhere, from Morocco to Africa to South America, Central America, the United States, it has been grown, Asia, all over the world by different cultures for different reasons, but it's traveled with us for thousands of years. The history is like absolutely unbelievable actually until you like look into like legitimate archaeologist research, horticulturalist, all the different I'm forgetting the actual term. There's a group of people that studies the way people live, anthropologists that look into the way that it was used.
Ethnobotanists are the ones that are really going to get into that history of how humans use plants and interact with plants too.
And it's just fascinating that like the more we dig stuff up, the more we find cannabis resin and cannabis just by itself, like wrapped up with, from the lowliest low of the, person on the totem pole to like the king, like and everyone in between, like in all cultures, everywhere. There's some amount of use for different reasons and even like high praise. Like some places it's like a spiritual like religion, many places it has spiritual religious context, and it's just fascinating the history, and
The
I think
early
it's one of the
efforts
things.
to regulate drug use were all religious. They were all sort of about gatekeeping the doors to enlightenment, right? That these were shortcuts to enlightenment or other paths to enlightenment. The other thing that just came up for me, Jack, while you were talking, is this whole idea of free the plant. And I like the thought of free the plant, and plants should be free. And how can you make it illegal? It's just a plant. But the whole spirit of free the plant really flies in the face of like license the plant or patent the plant. It's like, no, this is a freaking plant. We can't go from like complaining and belly aching about it being made illegal to then be like, okay, now it's mine, it's all mine, it's private property. It's like, what the hell, guys? Like, free the plant.
That's like the overgrow the world thing. It's like spread it
Yeah.
far and wide. That's why I send out so many seeds freely. That's why I've handed off so many cuts. I gave my neighbor one of the females that I didn't end up growing, and it almost looked like an autoflower because they just like grew it in a little pot outside on their front patio. And it was just like one little cola of Spartans Project V F2, and it smells amazing. Actually, finished in northern San Diego, and it's amazing, man. Just to see like somebody they have other gardening experience, but they never grown cannabis before, and just to empower somebody like that to they're like I think it's about ready for harvest. Like I came out, I was like give it a little bit longer, but it is about there, and they're drying it now and just getting ready to smoke their first harvest ever of some stuff. And it's just that is the thing I think that will keep cannabis alive for so long. All the people that have that passion to, enjoy it, both smoking it, growing it, harvesting it, but spreading it around, handing it off to your friends, family, and even complete strangers. Sometimes I like going to these events and meeting people and telling them about this show, other shows, and like, hey, growing's really not that difficult. Like you can get in pretty low cost, especially where we're at. Our weather is good enough if you just pop a plant outside here or there, if you're able to with your own private property or land or whatever. Um, check your local laws and guidelines and whatever. But uh, if you can make it work for yourself, it's a lot more achievable than some people might think. And I'm glad that we're able to keep advocating that each week on this show. And Brandon, if you want to turn your camera to the side, we can spotlight. We've got some plants and flower over here looking nice and green, healthy, beautiful trellised up canopy, some nice buds forming. What are we looking at? Like week 3, 2, 2.5, 3?
Let's see. These were put into flower December 14th, I believe. So I think we're at day like 23 or
Yeah,
24. Maybe?
about 3 weeks.
Yeah. These are all blueberry train mac. This one right here is looking nice.
You can see some frost rails. It's not quite focusing, but yeah, it's tough with the adequate grow lighting. Sometimes wants to wash out the picture there, but you can definitely tell it's a nice frosty nug forming up.
Yeah. They're all nice. Keeping my eye on a couple of them. We'll see. We'll see what
Got
happens.
Now, how
anything
about
you're
this research that shows that hop latent viroid can go through the pollen and infect plants that way? You were talking about situations where people, Jack in particular, where like there are situations where people would just release pollen and they'd get into plants serendipitously or not. I think that could be a huge issue. Not to be the doom and gloom guy here.
well, and then like
But,
even
but if
that
you
is
got
a
if
risk
you get
for,
like Brandon with triploid, you don't got to worry about that.
but you do if it carry hot blatant
Well,
viroids,
still
right?
get you
Because
still get the viroid though.
You can't accept the pollen. How are you gonna get the viral?
it'll stick to the
Well, it'll
plant. It's
still
just not
get
going to
into
pollinate it.
contact with the plant tissue, right?
So,
It's a physical
one
I
of
guess
contact
it
thing.
depends on where the pol or how the incompatibility happens, but I don't think it's a physical incompatibility.
I spoke to somebody just recently, back in California, who said that they're finding a more latent viroid that has a higher infection rate. It's harder to detect. He said the only positive, and he doesn't know how long it will stay like that, is that it doesn't seem to have as many symptoms.
Like detrimental effects. Maybe cannabis cryptic
This is
virus,
what
Matthews.
now? Like a strain of hop latent viroid?
Yes. Yeah, he's saying
Yeah, I
that.
think that there's something to that too.
Yeah, because he's saying that he'll pop clean on seeds that he's done, and then 3 months later, after they've been in isolation the whole time, they'll pop hot, but they'll be clean to begin with. And then he'll say he'll test stuff that he has. It'll pop. It won't pop, and then he'll wait. It'll be in isolation, then it'll pop, and then it'll disappear. So it's like, and he said, and what he was telling me that it's a lot more harder to detect this one.
I wonder if that could be like viroid titer levels and that kind of a thing, accounting for some of the weird variants. Um, but also if you happen to get like, because the viroids replicate so quickly and ostensibly they change a lot. But I think there's some research that might put some doubt into how much that really happens. But yeah, I could totally see the possibility for a strain that's like very low symptomatic, but still like present. That happens a lot with pathogens of this kind. So
I also
yeah,
think
it's a brave new world.
it
That's
could be
what he
like
was saying, that it was less symptoms on most cultivars. It wouldn't express even if it tested positive. But he said the issue was that it was more severely
Oh
transmissible.
yeah. That's
it's
a pretty
interesting.
common theme.
It
Yeah.
was more virulent.
It kind of reminds me of like the last few years, whenever somebody gets sick, they kind of assume the first thing a lot of people think is like COVID-19 or something. And then they do
Oh,
test
sure.
and then they're negative for COVID, but they have a cough and a cold, whatever. And it turns out it's like the flu or a cold or some other illness. But
Right,
right
right.
now, everybody's like mind is on hop latent viroid. And maybe it is changing and shifting, but maybe it is cannabis cryptic virus or some tomato mosaic virus. Like, there's a lot of other things it could
There's a
be, but they
bunch of
present
those
differently.
out, yeah. More and more cannabis viruses actually. I'm actually I mean, I wish that it wasn't the case, but I'm happy to see it get looked at a lot more.
Well, we're creating more and more incubators for them, probably, Matthew.
Oh yeah.
One, better able to
Yeah,
identify
that's a
it.
real phenomena, I think. The more and more of these sort of indoor grow situations going on, often with, I don't know, maybe conditions appropriate for different kind of diseases to develop and things like that. Um, yeah, I think about that as growing expands, as more and more sort of areas put to cannabis cultivation, the plant pests will probably develop and spread more easily.
I wonder, I don't think this will become a question necessarily anytime soon, but I wonder a bit, it kills me to think of this even, but like there are historical sites of cultivation in many parts of the world, including the United States. And I just wonder if like feral hemp um populations will become this like massive like refugia for hop latent viroid and some of the other viruses and other pathogens and pests for that matter. But
Likely
mostly I'm
already are.
talking about this.
I
Now,
would guess they likely already do.
well, on
Yeah.
the one hand, I feel like these feral populations have a lot of qualities that we would still want to keep, to have access to for breeding and things like this, like traits that are useful, especially that they might have sort of developed or kind of rekindled post or escaping domestication, back out in that ferality. But at the same time, I wonder if it will become so bad that we'll have to like, destroy those plants, or if there are places where people just won't be able to grow successfully nearby. I wonder about that. What do you guys think about that?
Good luck destroying them. We've tried. They used to pay farmers a pretty hefty amount to go out and try and destroy feral hemp populations, and it is so hard to fully eradicate. It is a resilient plant that wants to throw a little bit of seed here and there. A bird eats one, shits it out across state lines somewhere else. It starts growing a patch, and that patch becomes bigger and bigger and bigger before they find it. And that patch creates another patch that creates another patch, which it's sort of like this sort of brush fire that just like never actually gets fully snuffed out. And I do think that it's currently already probably carrying some stuff. And the more we're getting to research it, the more we're starting to identify hop latent viroid or any other pathogen in an official sense, where we're starting to categorize it, see the effects on yield and terpene loss and things like that. Where before just figuring out what it was. Now we're like understanding like how it's transferred and that it's best tested in the roots because the roots will pop 100% of the time. Or like if you test the top, maybe it'll give you a false negative, or like the middle or bottom or even lower percentages than if you test root tissue. So we're learning more and more. And I think that um, like Matthew kind of stated, I'm happy to see that we're at least identifying it because then the more we know, like ignorance isn't going to win us the battle, right? The more we
Right.
understand these things, the better we can fight them and start to, clean them up with tissue culture or move on to the next crop, just pop a new seed, find something better. If these things are old, tired, beat up, sometimes I think, there's a lot of good stuff to hunt and, it might be similar or even containing some of those genetics before they got infected. And I don't know. I think not that seeds are 100%. I do think that it's a larger percent of clean start.
I have a question for Matthew here on vertical and horizontal transmission of HLV. I guess I normally think about it being vertically transmitted because that seems to be what everybody's sort of worried about it coming across in their propagation materials. How readily does it spread horizontally from individual to individual?
I think that's the one a lot of people are thinking, like mechanically. It seems like I don't actually think I actually don't remember the statistics from the recent report that I made a post about actually. But I think it's pretty good at mechanically transmitting like from touch, for example, or
Okay,
when people are
so
using tools and that kind of a thing.
it can be readily passed from one plant. Does it have to be touching the other plant? And can
I
there
think
be
so, or
intermediate
like or
vectors? Can insects vector it, like clothing rubbing
that's
against
been
it?
a big bugbear for people, and you guys know, I think I've talked about it, where like there are examples of viruses out there where you would think that you would just need a bug to like slurp up the sap and then get the viroid or
Yeah, but
whatever
sometimes that
virus,
doesn't
and
happen.
then just
Yeah.
yeah, but it seems like for some insects for some viral pathogens, you kind of do have to be like correlated with something that can help you out. And I don't really understand the dynamics of that totally, but with viroid, I think it's a lot more. Um, I think it matters a lot less. And so when people say to me, like, do you think insects could vector hoplite viroid? I think it's plausible. I want to be I'm the kind of fastidious person that wants to see research and that kind of thing. But yeah,
But that's
I
not
mean,
really the
I
fear that
think,
isn't the big fear is more vertical transmission. So coming in with the seeds or the clones or whatever.
yeah, because it's like silent that way. That's like super silent, like you'd
Right.
have to test for sure.
Well, this would make a big difference whether the feral hemp is going to be a region of refuge for the virus, because it would have to be able to sort of horizontally transfer over to the hemp and then horizontally transfer back to our cultivated varieties. And if it's not sort of readily hopping horizontally that much, then especially in its latent form, I guess I wouldn't be as worried about that. Just trying to answer sort
But
of that
just
first
pollen,
question
for
you had.
example, just like
That's what
pollen.
he just said. Yes, that pollen alone is enough to
Yeah,
do it, and that's what
pollen.
worries
Yeah,
me. One male
that's the
can
one
throw
that
pollen for
worries me
20 miles.
because the quote, and I also want to say this was just I want to be really upfront, especially when we have the veritable Dr. Coco in the house. That this was just one research report, okay,
Yeah.
and it was an
These are questions I
MDPI.
actually don't know the answer to too. So I'm here trying to learn.
No, I appreciate it, but it
Yeah.
was one report, an MDPI report, no less. I'd like to see additional research, right? But I have no reason to doubt it, really, especially with all the other circumstantial information that we have. I'm not surprised at like a 40 to 60% transmission rate from pollen to from male to female through pollen,
Well, from
or
male to next
from,
generation through pollen, right?
huh?
It's not male to female. It could be, but I would
Yeah,
assume
pollen
that
in the pollen
it's
grain.
pollen to seed is the infection route, not pollen to female plant, but the
Yes, that.
pollen is infecting the seed, which is then infecting the next generation.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so we're still basically, just to sort of summarize in my head, maybe for everybody that thinks like me, we're still thinking about vertical transmission.
Yeah.
So from parent to offspring or through a cloning process is where it sort of gets transferred mostly. But you would be thinking potentially wild hemp pollen, or like our cultivated pollen, I guess, could blow into a wild hemp population,
Yes.
exposing that wild hemp population to the virus, where it stays in that population, and then that pollen could get blown back onto our cultivated crops, bringing the virus back to sort of
Exactly. Yeah.
the
So
domesticated.
a home grower could do it. A feral hemp population could do it. It could somehow get into the population there. I've seen some really brilliant points in the chat talking about whether we might be able to get resistant populations from that, and that's also a possibility too. But I think that the issue that I have is that like it's because hot plate viroid, what's weirdly insidious about hot plate viroid to me versus other viruses like beet curly top virus and others is that those viruses tend to be like lethal to the plant. So they actually outright kill the plant pretty reliably. Whereas
Right.
Hoplite and Viroid will stunt it, but it might still like, it might eke out an existence and then continue to be like inocula.
So it would affect
And
its
so
its reproductive fitness, but it would just take so much longer before you'd see that at the population level, kind of really affecting the presence of the virus or the viroid in the population.
yeah,
So
I think that you wouldn't just like have like a couple of generations and then suddenly
Right.
you've got, the yeah,
It'd take a billion
the
years.
superior
Eventually, there
hemp.
would be selective pressure in
I'm
that
curious for a clarifying question because Brandon mentioned earlier having like a non-pollinatable triploid, and there's other people. Breeder Steve has talked about non-pollinatable cannabis, and it sounds. I initially thought what you were saying was the pollen alone would like make the mother get hoplite and viroid, but now what it sounds like is the seeds that it would produce are going
The
to be
seed
carrying the hoplite and
I
viroid. So if you
think
had
the
a
brother might
non-pollinatable
become
crop,
infected too, though. But
see, that's what
yeah,
I thought.
That
mostly
would be
the,
an
the story
interesting
was,
question to know.
yeah.
Yeah, the epidemiology, sort of how it spreads.
Does mom
I
and the
don't,
seed offspring get it, or is it just the seed offspring?
We have established that horizontal transfer is possible. Like if I took an
yes.
infected plant,
I've seen that.
especially if it was actively sort of exhibiting the symptoms of the virus and like rubbed it on another plant or whatever.
Medicropper's YouTube channel. He's done it. I've seen it
Yeah, yeah.
firsthand. Literally, he
Okay.
took an infected plant, rubbed it on another one next to it. It
So
transferred.
that can happen. I just don't think that that's, and XYZ brought up this question, which I was kind of driving towards. We tend to keep our plants pretty isolated, certainly super isolated from pollen. Like I'm not worried about my plants getting pollinated by
No, yeah.
and I mean, I don't know. I think the only way I'm going to get hop latent viroid in my grow is to bring it in with the genetics that I'm growing. I guess I don't think, and in most of the commercial facilities I like know of, they're not going to just get this, but outdoor farms might in a different or be exposed in a different kind of way.
I feel like that's probably true. The only other caveat to that is this, and to the extent of which I don't think anyone really knows. But like the fact that hop latent viroid can then also transfer, uh, obviously there's hop too, but then like into these other plants that people like to grow too, if they're hobbyist gardeners, right? Like tomato or chrysanthemum or something like that. Or, God forbid, if like Home Depot or one of these big brands, if hoplite and viroid somehow got into and affected a bunch of those plants, not like at the source, because they probably test for weird stuff and that kind of thing, although they might not. Um, but if like some freak accident were to happen where exposure to a bunch of like plants that are going to get sold to people in the retail space, and then that could be a thing that happens. I don't know like how
IPM is
likely that
slacking,
is,
even
Oh
at
my
big box
God.
stores, especially here in Southern
but yeah,
California.
they're lacking right in that
I've
way.
been there
You
and
just gave me
seen.
this vision of a dystopian future where we go to buy our cannabis plants at like the nursery and Home Depot.
Well, even
Oh, that was not the particular dystopia I was referring to.
It'll happen eventually,
what
Doc.
about
In my head,
what
I'm like,
about
oh
this,
my God,
Matthew?
that's gonna happen, isn't it?
What about this,
That might
Matthew?
actually be more likely.
What about
Huh.
what about this chance? Okay, we'll say that same patch of wild hemp. We'll call it feral. I like that. Feral hemp.
Feral hemp,
It's
yeah.
feral hemp that's been infected with this. Now it's in nature, but it's in an undisturbed zone. That's why there's this feral hemp to begin with. Man hasn't really found it. They don't disturb it. And guess what? Nature finds a way. And nature finds
Yeah.
a way for its own defense. And now we've figured out, we stumble across it and we figure out these plants, either have a genetic trigger or something that we can trigger with a product or something. And now we've solved the thing because we let nature take care of it for us. It might be something like that.
There are
Work.
people preserving it.
Maybe the,
Aaron the
the
grower
thing the
has.
thing
Sorry, go ahead.
well, no, it's a good point, and I think like people were saying in the chat, you might get resistant populations out of that, right? The thing for me is that uh there's only two things that kind of complicate that to me. The main thing is one, um viroids and viruses replicate super quickly, and they tend to not be exactly the same. Every replicate's a little bit different. So even if you did get resistant populations, are they going to be broadly resistant, or are they really only going to be resistant to a narrow, like, strain group?
But
And
it could be
I
a
just
mechanism. It could be a mechanism in a plant like a superoxide blast.
Well, the thing is that it's a little strand of RNA, right? What's complicating about hop latent viroid is that like what would affect hop latent viroid would affect plant RNA.
Right.
So it's very so and plant antiviral responses, and I'm not an expert in like the deep arcana of phytopathology in that way, but my understanding is that there's not a whole lot of tricks in that bag. So I don't know. Maybe though, I'm not discounting it, certainly.
Yeah, it's always an arms race between the sort of immune system of the organism that's fighting off the virus and the virus itself, sort of figuring out how to defeat that.
Yeah, because why hot plate environment is a problem is that it gets into the plant and the plant thinks, "Oh, cool, here's some RNA. I should really process that." And processes the viroid instead of all the other cool stuff that it needs to like survive. And so the plant doesn't know any better, and and that's what happens. That's why you get all these weird symptoms like chlorosis and stunting, because it's literally the genes it needs to make are like not being coded. Um, so it's kind of really crappy because it's not like the virus, it's not like other viruses even where like they might take advantage of the plant cell machinery, but then like have other effects on the plant. Like it's literally just a case of mistaken identity.
Yeah, and the cells
Yeah.
start doing the wrong thing. I liken that to like, dumping a bunch of comic books into like an elementary school math room or
I
classroom.
love your analogy.
Thanks. Like everybody's supposed to be reading this math books and learning math, but you've just filled
Yes.
the classroom with comic books. So all the students are now totally distracted and they're all reading the comic books and they're not accomplishing the work that they needed to do there. And really
Right.
nothing's getting done. And like random shit's happening because
Yeah, and then the plant of state gets stunted. So vote for me, Matthew Gates, 2028, I don't know. But yeah, so I agree with you. That's a really excellent example. Yeah, it's like the plant cell just processes the hoplite viroid RNA, and then we just get a bunch of that and
just
not the
keep
stuff that
reading
it
that
needs.
and
So
making that and doing that and not doing like
but there
the
seem to be plants that are more or less resistant to these effects. So I wonder, so what I think they're actually resistant to might be like the process, or or in some ways, they might even be maladaptive, you might say. I have no idea, like in these examples, if it's true, but they might be kind of sort of weirdly maladaptive in the processing that actually makes them resistant. Um, which might actually have other, outlier effects that we don't really that are not ideal for like maybe other aspects of growth. But but that's how like insect resistance works too, where you'll get like aphids or ligas or something where they get exposed to a pesticide and then they have receptors change or they slightly change the shape or whatever, but in a place where they're getting inundated with pesticide, they're adaptive and it's good. But in a situation where they're competing against their normal brethren, they might be like way slower to reproduce or all these other factors because it's actually not optimal to like have the receptors like this. Because they're usually like things that affect their like neurology or something. So if that makes sense, right? So
It
like
sort of reminds
actually
me,
it
there's an
washes
example
out
in humans
when the
where in Africa there was so much malaria, and I think
yes,
that
sickle
the
cell,
human
exactly.
adaptation was sickle cell in the blood, and they're actually less susceptible, even though sickle cell has downsides, it has the
And
benefit
not
of
even that much less, I think.
right, but they're it kind of makes me think of like that plant. Like certain plants are less impacted by hop latent viroid, although maybe they have something that's like not operating properly within their code.
I think you're
It still
right.
allowed them to be more resistant.
I feel like that might be what's going on, but again, I don't really know. It's speculation. I want to be upfront about that, but that's the kind of thing I think people should think about this organism in this way. And then of course, to make sure that everyone hates me, then there's the fact that like people who grow cannabis, especially as things get more accepted in a commercial sense and also in a home grow sense, like there are other crops out there. Do you think they deserve respect too? Like if cannabis is shown to be a vector for like I'd mentioned before, hop powder mildew, and other sorts of things like this, I feel like how are people who grow these plants going to play nicely with each other? Like we have the problem with like citrus greening disease. Like we don't have like jackbooted booted thugs like breaking into everyone's backyard to make sure that they don't have citrus screening disease, right? But on the same token, and I'm glad for that. But at the same token, it's like the citrus industry is really important. So how do you like
We
balance
hold
that?
on. I
As a
get ag
society, we had to
inspectors.
think about these things.
Matthew, I got an ag inspector the other week, drove up my driveway, knocked on our door, asked to walk around and look at our citrus plants.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And how did that make you feel?
I was fine with it. I mean,
Yeah, that was fine, right? Yeah.
I kind
You had
of,
nothing to hide, so who cares, right?
yeah. I mean, I was actually interested to talk to her. She was cool people, and I was interested to kind of learn, like, you know, what she was doing and where she had been and had she talked to our neighbors and stuff like that. So I was fine with it. But yeah, they came around, she set traps, and if they found, God, now I can't remember what they were looking for. We would not have had the right to like tell them not to cut down our citrus tree or to treat our citrus tree.
You might be in the quarantine. Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's really
if
bad.
they find what they were looking for. I can't remember what they were looking for, but they would like cut down our little lemon tree or whatever. It's like, or
That
treat it.
probably is it.
I
It's
mean, think
probably
about
citrus green
California's
disease
agriculture industry and how much citrus brings in. Like
Yeah,
for the
your
exactly.
world,
tree,
not just the
They
US
do
even.
that, and
yeah,
it
no,
makes
it's
sense.
it's vital to
And
the
if I was on
entire
an
global
organic farm
supply.
and the treatment was some chemical pesticide, they would spray the chemical pesticide. Then they would
Yes,
have
they
the
would.
full legal right to do that. And I actually don't think that that would affect my organic certification, which is another interesting thing about the organic
It is
certification.
actually, yeah. I think you're
Yeah.
right about
They
that.
have those
Well,
little wiggle room spots for stuff
there's
like
wiggle
that.
room because it was done to me. It wasn't something that I did as the farmer, and I didn't have any say or control over it. But it's still chemical residue on the crops, like to the extent that
Right.
that matters. Uh, um, but yeah, there are some things, and I mean, frankly, we live in a society with other people, and like our actions, like my freedom to swing my arm ends at the border
Yes.
of your face. Like I can't, right? With my freedom start imposing on you, then they should be limited. And yeah, that's sort of,
There's ethical duties. I think
we
even with
need to
like
do that.
pollen,
Yeah.
letting pollen fly or like not checking your insects and like, oh, I'm a hobby citrus grower and I'm gonna go risk the billion-dollar industry that we have that supplies
Yeah.
vital, without vitamin C in citrus. I mean, like scurvy was a real thing when people were like crossing the seas and like until they realized like how valuable and vital it is. It's an important part of human function. And we're one of the world's largest producers of it. So it's a I understand that they're vitally interested in protecting that major asset to not just us, but the entire world, the US, and otherwise. But it's unfortunate if it happens to be your tree. But in this case, Doc's tree is just fine. And you could maybe set up things to organically protect to prevent. I think there's some sort of bug. And I think we talked, there was like some oak bark solution that was like being sprayed as an organic
Yeah,
option.
that's the right. You got Asian citrus psyllid is the vector for the phytoplasma, which causes citrus greening disease in California, Florida, other places, and also China. Um, so it's a problem. It's a huge it like it no for those who don't know, I have talked about this a few times in the past, but it's like it mollywopped the California and Florida. Like it like took out like 40% of the orchards, like, in the orange state, right?
Yeah.
So
You
it's
could see the
it's
cost go
real
up
bad.
in citrus. I mean, it was one of those
Yeah.
things, supply and demand. When there's only so much of it,
And that's not
then
the
it gets
only
more
pest
expensive.
too. That's a huge problem for that matter, even.
It shows the importance of like I watch a lot of these shows that are like border checkpoints and like people getting busted for things like guns, drugs, or whatever that they're bringing, but they also have ag checkpoints at these things, and there's a reason.
Yes.
Like that is as vital of an interest in some regards as some of the other things. So it's
It can be
a lot of
more. I
people are
mean, you bring
looking
a
out.
pest in, a novel pest in that wipes out a major industry in a state or a major crop. Yeah, that can cause real damage to lots of people.
Like
Um,
starvation,
and it
Yeah.
like
could definitely
increased
cause
starvation.
famine.
People are already
You
starving
release
and on
the
the
wrong thing
borderline.
in the wrong place. Yeah, absolutely. It could lead to a famine.
And I want to give
One of the pests
Spartan Grown his
in
chance because it's that
oh
time.
yeah,
He's got
yeah.
about 15 minutes before he's got to go over to the Michigan Bros grocery show. I saw the dog running around in the background. I know he's probably got to hit the bathroom, refill his drinks and things like that. He's got another 2 hours ahead of him. But Spartan Grown, I'm going to give you the floor for however long you like.
Such a
And
trooper.
Yeah,
yeah,
take
final
it
thoughts
up.
and shout outs.
Well, thanks, Jack. Yeah, I just have always have a good time hanging out with you guys, and this was a great episode. Shout out to chat. It's been continually growing, and like when I'm looking, keeping one eye on it as best I can, it's continually scrolling. So there's people being active. So I love seeing that. I love seeing everybody dropping a like when they get a chance. Here's a reminder for you guys. Otherwise, you can catch me in about 15 minutes over at the Michigan Bros Grow Show. YouTube. My mind's not working because I smoked too much during the show.
Always
See
great
you
having you,
guys.
Spartan.
Keep growing, everybody.
Good seeing you, buddy. Reminds me that we did miss last week. I didn't want to go through the whole show without addressing that it was New Year's Eve. I was on the road traveling, and it was just kind of like a. I was surprised we even did the Christmas Eve. We got at least one of those 2 weeks. We talked
I was
even.
surprised too. I didn't know you guys were going to do a show. I'm like, oh shit, they did a show yesterday. I didn't
We,
even know
we
that.
thought about taking both weeks off, but without any notice the week before, I felt at least I had to try and pull it together for one. And at the end of that show, I let everybody know, like, hey, next week I'm going to be on the road, so it's very likely not going to happen. And it didn't. But we're back. I think we hit like something like 46 or 47 out of the 52 weeks, which is pretty good. We missed a couple, but uh, I think pretty maybe even higher than that. It just when we got the little Spotify Wrapped, it was in the 40s or something, but that was maybe a month ago. So. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's been a good year. Well, we're starting off this year on the right foot. We're doing the thing on the Sunday, keeping the people happy,
Doing the
and I
thing.
love showing up for these few hours. And as we may have discussed, we're definitely keeping the intros and conclusions. I think that the way that we're running the show, I've been really happy with where we're at. So it's this week we didn't have any topic. We just kind of talked a little bit, grow, and bounced all around from a whole bunch of different topics. So sometimes it's nice to just kind of see where it goes. And I'm curious if anybody has anything that they didn't get to talk about so far that they'd like to bring up in our final 13 minutes.
And just give a shout out to everybody that's growing with me in the NYGC. We started last week. We're about a week in. So if you're about a week into your grow, go ahead and sign up for the NYGC if you didn't already. It's a lot of fun. Over 100 of us growing right now.
It's good stuff. I love anything that encourages people to get growing and growing together, the camaraderie and seeing other people's plants. It's not a competition, but it's always fun to see other people,
Yeah.
harvesting
Yeah,
around the
our
same
challenges are
times. And
definitely not competitions. It's just about growing together. And like I said before, this year we're going to do the cloning side challenge on February 5th. We're all going to try to take cuttings off of our plants and see if we can get them to root. So mainly just for fun and just to get to do it and see how it works and see how different people root their clones and stuff like that. So
I
it's a
think that
problem.
whether it's growing or like fitness or any really goal in life, if you have like a accountability, I think I've heard it termed,
Yeah.
but somebody that you do it along with, where you see them posting. Shout out to Rifa Mamacita on Instagram. Just randomly, it seems like whenever I start seeds, they're starting seeds, and like they'll be transplanting around the same time that I am, and they might be a week ahead or a week behind me, and it kind of keeps me like, on. I see their updates, and I'm like, you know what, I gotta. Oh, I need to go take care of my garden as well because like, they're getting ahead, and I want to keep up because we roughly know when each other started, and it's fun to track along and just make sure that you're staying on top of it. Anything like that, it's just fun to talk about with people and have share that commonality because it's there. I'll admit, like in all my other hobbies I've done in life, from sports and other things, this is one of the most diverse groups of people I've ever worked with. I know a lot of people like to say that there's not diversity for one reason or another if they look at certain shows or groups or events. But the people that I interact with, we have like 31 or 32 countries that listen. And even just within the US, like it's a beautiful mix of amazing people and all the different countries. I really appreciate all the different people and backgrounds, and it brings me together with people that I probably never would have been having conversations with, and it ends up being that thing that breaks down that wall and allows us to make friendships and long-term bonds with people that, in other countries even. That's the really most mind-blowing thing for me is like I grew up like seeing the internet kind of blow up, and now it's like, wow, it really is powerful in doing like a lot of these things that we hoped it might do. Putting information out there for free, giving people access for free, connecting people together in communities where they can go and not be judged. They can use anonymous names or pseudonyms and things like that, even if they're in like illegal states or countries, and still get advice and continue to progress and grow. It's one of those, technology winning occasionally, doing the right thing. Not all social medias are horrible. And I think that if we use them properly, like we are here, coming together for common goods, I think it's a really beautiful thing. And I can't wait to keep doing more of it. And maybe we'll, this year, I'm really hoping to make some sort of events happen, even if it's just like a live taping of a podcast or meeting up at an already planned event with a couple of us. I know we've got several of us in the San Diego area. So it's something that we can certainly make happen. And there's so many good people in the chat that I see like every single week, the same names. And I know Doc's met some of these people. They've come out and visit him, and it's really cool when you do get to meet up. I've gone to a couple events and been invited to, whether it's the Farmers Cup coming up next week or the Simple Life Cult event that I went to. It was a lot of fun, and you meet some really great people that are growing fire and just really passionate about the plant, just like us. And it's I just feel like we're that similar passion we share really bonds us all together so much. It's like if you really love this plant and you're growing it pretty much all the time, it there's something about that just brings people together in a great way. But I'll keep on. I'll cut off my platitudes and you know stuff there.
Yeah, I
But
think that's just the best way to use social media, to have people that are sort of like interested in something and be able to connect with people all over the world. Literally, they kind of interested in the same thing, but have lots of different perspectives on it. Um, that's a cool way to use social media. The way I hate using social media is like keeping in touch with people that I would otherwise like see or visit or have a phone call with. And instead I'm just like seeing some like update. I'm like, oh, okay, they're all right still, they're alive. And like, so I don't go see them or I don't go visit them or whatever. And it can drive us to be more distant from people that we otherwise would have been closer to. But like, I wouldn't have known you probably, Jack or Brandon or Spartan or Matthew or whatever. I mean, so to be able to get together and come together around a common interest, I love it. And all the people watching us get to come and join and feel like we have a community here out of the ether.
it really has become one. Like we built a thing that is a real thing now. Like I've met several of you, smoked with several of you. Like I've gone on trips at all the way across the state and gotten to stay at the properties of some of the people on these shows. And it's just like I never ever would have thought this was going to be a thing 20 years ago, Like it's just crazy. Even though there were early forums and stuff, it was so hush hush and like there was a lot of like hiding how you did it, who you were, and this and that. People would wear
Or
masks or
having
not show
somebody
their
come to your
face.
house is just, or like, go to there. It's, yeah, like the breaking down of those walls or the sort of the merging of these things and bringing it into a more mainstream. I agree. It's cool. And it just keeps kind of, we've been doing it for long enough now that we've sort of seen how it continues to change just during the course of this show.
It is amazing because like the laws changing in different states, and then like now Oklahoma, which we saw become legal since like this show was created before it was legal in Oklahoma. Now like several of our panelists have moved there and like created businesses there, and like it's become a market that is like one of the markets. It's not like just like this burgeoning early market. It is established and developed, and if you don't bring some heat, if you're not bringing some fire, like you're going to be in competition with people like Brandon and Aaron the Grower and some other
Right.
guys who've been doing it for a long time and are doing it well and coming in with good price points and providing stuff that the people want. So it's another very legitimate market, and I love to see that. I mean, Michigan was one of the I was from Ohio, so being like one of the earlier medical markets, and California has long been around, and it's just great to see so many other markets develop. And Noah the Grow has been doing it for a long time, and up there up north, I think you're in Washington, right? So it's
Yep.
it's a just awesome. Every single state is a little bit different too. So even like my wife was raised in Arizona. She went to a dispensary for the first time because she's lived out of Arizona for so long that like now it's rec. Like when we'd go, her mom would have to go because she was medical to the dispensary, be like, hey, can you get us some stuff at the dispensary? And but now it's adult use or whatever. So we went in and checked out. It was like 80 or 90% of the same brands as California, but then like there's like that 10 to 20% that was just exclusive there. So we wanted to try the stuff that we couldn't get here. And I think we even did like one just to see how it compared. Like it was
Are you getting
Willie's Reserve.
like vape carts, or what do you mean there's the same stuff? Like the same brands of what?
Same
Like
brands, flour, edibles, it's Steezy or Stizzy,
yeah.
whatever. A bunch of other, they're going through a whole bunch of shit I won't get into, but we've only got 5 minutes left. Yeah, it was literally the same brand, same packaging, same looking product, from they can present it differently
Well,
there.
the packaging, go to MJ BizCon, you'll see them all selling the packaging of all the, I mean, you get like the 20 different styles of packaging, and you're like, oh, I know who uses that one. And I know
And the batteries for the vapes, the different like,
yeah,
oh, there's that little
exactly.
short one that like it looks
This
like
is
I don't
where they
know.
all are getting the companies that they buy those supplies from in the first place. And the compliant packaging market is a pretty interesting market because they all have like the different childproof like mechanisms and whatever. Yeah.
That are like adult proof if you're a little too high and have arthritis like myself. And
Oh, the first time I get something like that, I break it open, and I'm like, oh, now I see what I was supposed to do to have opened this. So like the
I
next
need to
one, I
just
open
push this
that.
little thing here and it would have slid
Yeah,
right
it's like
out, but
push
I
up,
just
skip it.
yanked it
Meanwhile, I'm
apart
like a
like a
bear.
gorilla.
I open this thing like the same way a grizzly bear would open it, I think.
I feel the same way, and I ripped apart so many packages because maybe there was like a little piece of tape I didn't see that I needed to like cut. I was pressing on the
Right.
childproof thing, but like there was
Oh,
a,
there's
a
a
clear
button
piece of
usually
tape
someplace, and I like rip the whole side of the package out of them. I'm like asking for scissors.
what I hate is the concentrate lids on the really small, like half gram or like 1 gram jars. Is like you have to press down and then twist. And some of them, like that little seal mechanism, it just like gets impossible. You have to like press it down super fucking
Oh,
hard and like use. Uh, it's a fucked situation.
it's
So
wedged in there.
I get that there's a need for childproofing, but at the same time, it does make it sort of inaccessible to certain audiences.
No, I'm sorry. The childproofing should come before the kids get their hand on the package. If the kids get to the point where their hands are on the package, like you've already failed, and this is really the last line of defense. So, yeah,
It was out and
Now that's
accessible.
planning to fail. Yeah.
No, I agree. With anything, there's
it gives you a
responsibility,
false
but
sense of security, if anything. I think that's like,
our
oh, it's
government doesn't
childproof. We
believe in
can leave
us
it
to be
here on the coffee
responsible.
table.
They have to regulate us because obviously we can't be responsible adults. They have to look over our shoulder to make sure that we don't. And I'm somewhat, being exaggerating there because
Certainly
sometimes
there are
kids
examples.
die and
Yeah.
get sick, but it's like more like choking on the fucking plastic cap than the cannabis, right? If they got into cannabis, they're gonna get a little too high, probably get a little paranoid and pass the fuck out. It's not gonna kill them. So, not to say that I advocate that happening. There's a lot worse things. If they ate a pack of cigarettes, they're fucking dead. And cigarettes are all around, and there's no safe storage laws, and there isn't really too much childproofing. My little child hands could open them up and fucking throw them out in the trash. And so I could have just as well
And it's not
fucking
like the kids are gonna like open up the cannabis and then like pack a bowl and find the lighter and smoke it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe
yeah.
maybe these kids are 12 too. Maybe they are going to do that. So I don't know. But if they're 12,
It's
they're
pearl
probably going
clutching
to
at the
figure out to
worst.
push the button on the side of the box too. Like I don't know who we're really kidding here.
It says it in plain English, like press here,
Right? Press here, pull here, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you actually read the packaging a lot of the times, that's usually my downfall is I just think that
I
like,
know,
oh, I'm a
right?
man, I know how to do this shit. I'll fucking do it. I've put together so much furniture without reading directions. Like, how can I not open a fucking package without reading the direction? But it's
Yeah.
like there's secret little it some of them are, to their credit, actually very good at childproofing. So shout out to those people that maybe
Sometimes I
save
feel like
one kid.
they're bad openings, and so they make good childproofing, but they're actually just like bad
Shitty
openings.
packaging.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they're like, hey, this
So
is a
it's also
design
adult
feature.
proof too.
That's funny times.
Well, we got about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to pass it around the panel and we can run over so don't feel rushed. But I'm going to pass it first to Dr. MJ for final thoughts and shoutouts.
Hey guys, I'm glad I made it here. I missed last week and everybody missed the week before, so it's kind of been a while and I'm glad I got here. It's a fun show. Thank you to the community. Thanks, Jack, for running the show. I really like how consistent it is, and I like that this show just kind of keeps running and I can show up every week. So thank you for that. Grower love, everybody. I hope you guys are out there growing. If you want to grow with us in the NYGC, go sign up at cocoforcannabis.com where you'll find all my stuff. Check me out on YouTube, and I'll be back next week.
Great having you, Doc. And life advice for anybody. I think at the end of the show is always a good time to do it. It's not grow advice, but consistency is key, people. If you can be consistent in anything in life, show up on time, do something like
Yep.
this every week for years, that's why we have an audience. It's not like there's not 100 other grow shows. And you guys might listen to 10, 12, 50 of them. But the reason a lot of you keep coming back is like, we're actually going to be here for 2 hours talking mostly about growing, not getting into other topics. We really try to keep it on the grow talk and change it up here and there, but we have fun, and I think that a lot of people appreciate that. But consistency, like Brandon Ross is very consistent in a lot of things. But Brandon, final thoughts and shout outs.
Yep. Always great to be here with you guys. You guys can check out bokashiearthworks.net. You make fertilizers, new grow pots, microbes, all the good stuff. I'll see you guys next week.
Great having you, Brandon. And I mean, everybody on this panel is consistent. You guys are all here such a high percentage of the time. It's like a rare occasion that you get the DM, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it this week for this or that. And it's usually family stuff, and I totally get that. But Noah, the grower.
Yeah, had a great time. It was nice to talk to everybody, and the subjects were all great. And had a blast as always. Uh, I'm No Other Grow with Twos. You can find me there on Instagram. I'll see you next week.
Great having you as always. And last and certainly not least of our panelists this evening, Matthew Gates.
Good discussions as always. Got to talk about that new research. If you're interested to learn more about that, I actually have an intro to viroids video on my Zenthal YouTube channel. You can check that out. Although it's already out of date because of the new research I just talked about. I have a video coming up on my channel that I think a lot of people will be interested in, which is going to be my predictions and information about the top pests that this pest survey came about for cannabis. And I'm going to go over the top ones and where they are in the US and their strengths and weaknesses and that kind of stuff. You know how it is. So you can check me out there. You can also check me out if you're interested for professional needs at zenthal.com. You can contact me there. And also on Instagram, of course, I post a lot of my information in short, bite-sized forms, so you can check it out there too at Sync Angel. So yeah, and if you're curious, you can use the QR code to access my website too, that you can see there. And yeah, a good show, and look forward to our mutual success, man. Have a good one, everyone.
It's been great having you as always, and it is amazing how much things change, whether it's the viroid stuff, like, and I follow a few like channels that do updates on certain things, whether it's like uh, you're basically saying you're going to put out another video because you have to give the update. And I saw some legal stuff where like a new legal thing happened here in California on January 1st, and then it got stayed, and then it got challenged, and it's like already gone two,
Got
three different
dissolved
ways
too.
in the last like 6 days or 7 days. It's gone literally two or three different ways. So it's amazing how much you have to keep up to date with some of this stuff. But and it's an opportunity because you get to create more content, and the people will be there to enjoy it and get the most up to date current information. Because it's great when new research comes out, we get better information and better understand how to fight it. So thank you so much for digging through all of that stuff and sort of transcribing it and translating it for the people out there and making us aware so that we can better handle it in the future. But with all that being said, I'm at Jack Greenstock. You can find me on X at Jack_Greenstock. Jack Greenstock is my Instagram account. You can email me, jackgreenstock47@gmail.com. And I still got books and seeds available on 50strains.com. I think I'm going to do a 24% off sale for 2024. So cheers to the New Year's. Hope everybody has a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you all next week. Have a good one.
Grow
Grow
love,
love,
everyone.
everybody. And keep on growing. Shout out to Aaron the Grower and all the other guys who couldn't make it.
Keep growing.